Chapter 26. Club Paget. When I went to work the next day, I was already in a bad mood. After the argument, I had stayed out until the next morning. That day I had to work a double shift. I got to work as usual, but by the middle of the night, I was tired. I got out of the car and walked the railroads and the yards. At break time, I got back in the car. I had almost made it the whole night, but 2 hours before my shift ended, I fell asleep. If my old supervisor were still there, things would have gone differently. But I had a new supervisor, and he was an asshole. When he tapped on my window, I let it down and told him that I wasn't asleep. We argued for 10 minutes before I rolled the window back up on him. Like the asshole he was, he stayed there until my shift ended. As I was clocking out, he told me that he was writing me up. What did he tell me that for? I went off on him and left. I had the nerve to show up for work the next day, and they didn't say anything. I was off that Thursday, so I went up to Club Paget. Paget was a famous bar and restaurant where the who's who of Chicago hung out. The club was owned by a fellow named Rock. Rock treated me like I was his nephew. I'd known him since I was 14. The place was crowded, and business was booming. I told Rock that I wanted a second job. I wasn't playing either. He told me that I could come whenever I wanted to. I was back, and ready to work. In less than 2 weeks, my first day at Paget, I showed up dressed in my all-black, ready to service tables. When I arrived, Rock's sister-in-law, who was the server/bartender/manager, told me that I was going to work with this very flamboyant guy. I told her that I wasn't working with him. He was too flashy for me. He was calling straight men boo, and he was loud. She let me work with someone else that night. I made all of $12 that night, and I still had to tip the busboy out of that. I had watched the flamboyant guy rake in the dough. The next night, I wanted to work with him. One thing about him was that he knew how to make that money. He knew how to work the room. He had to serve a party of nearly 30 people, so we worked it together. When they arrived, and he began seating them, I noticed that it was Lil' Kim and her crew. When I saw her, I felt bad because I didn't want her to see me or notice me. Kim and I had never really moved in the same circles, but she knew who I was. I stayed working the opposite end of the table. They were ordering food, drinks, and champagne all night. When the bill came, it was over $4,000. When there were over 7 people in the party, we automatically received a percentage of the total amount. It was shaping up to be a good night for me. When he gave them the bill, they paid and were getting ready to leave when Lil' Kim walked up to me and said, "Danny boy, you have an incredible voice. You're gonna be okay." She grabbed my hand and put something in it. I could tell it was money. I put it in my pocket and thanked her. When they left, I went into the bathroom to see how much it was. It was almost $800. I shouted right there in the bathroom. God knew that I needed that money. I had bills at the house that needed to be paid, and God had sent an angel in the likes of Lil' Kim to bless me. I am forever grateful for her kind gesture. Not only did we get what we needed for bills, but I was given an overflow blessing. I had more than enough to do what needed to be done. When I got home, I couldn't wait to go to work the next night. But the next few nights were slow. In 3 days, I had only made a little over $100. One night I was working, and a patron noticed me and said, "Damn, Shug whooped your ass and now he got you serving tables?" That was the night I learned how to make drinks with a twist. You know, Coke with a little twist of dishwater mix. Or instead of finger foods, you give them finger drinks with a specialty spit shine. It was a joy to watch his old disrespectful ass guzzle it down. I kept that nigga with refills all night. After that night, I had made up my mind that I would no longer be ashamed to serve tables. When I got back on the clock, I used who I was to my advantage. I was singing for people's birthdays, and I was serving just about every Chicago Bull and Chicago Bear. I was getting my money. It was nothing for me to take home $500 to $600 every 3 to 4 days. Jamal Crawford used to hit me hard. He would order a $5 drink and still tip me $100. My finances were improving, but Kike and I were getting into it over every little thing. Her jealousy was out of control. I came home from a long shift to find the door locked and most of my things sitting out in the hallway. I got on the phone and called my cousin, Kimberla. She came all the way from the south side of Chicago in the middle of the night to rescue me from Kike and her chaos. It was the 3rd time she had done this. And I was out. I got the rest of my things and moved in with Kimberla. I just couldn't get this relationship thing right. Once again, I was a baby daddy. Living with Kimberla was a big relief for me because she and I got along so well. If there was something that she or I did that one of us didn't like, we let it be known up front. The other thing about it was that we knew each other so well that if we were getting on each other's nerves, we gave each other space. Staying with Kim, I was able to focus on my music. It was the first time I had lived with someone that wasn't my girlfriend. The best part of this move was that I no longer had anyone to answer to. Kimberla was my cousin. Together we could make things happen. Chapter 27. Subpoenaed to the Row. I lived with my cousin Kimberla for about a year. During this time, we ran into many wannabe investors who either didn't have the money or tried to take advantage of us. I was doing plays, recording on other artists' albums, and even had a single out, but I was ready for the real thing. With no concrete investors, I was ready to give up. Then Shug was released from jail. Shug was out for about a week before he called. "What you got up?" he asked. I was working a regular job. There was not much to tell. Shug asked me if I wanted to come back to LA. 3 weeks later, I was on my way back to LA. We were finally going to make this music thing happen. My people thought it was a bad idea, but I didn't listen. I just wanted it so bad that I had to take the chance. When I arrived in LA, I went up to the office and waited around for Shug. When he got there, we went to get something to eat. This time, things were really different. There were so many new faces. I felt like an outsider. And some of the new guys treated me like I didn't belong. They were riding around in luxury cars and wearing death row chains. It was like I was watching someone else play out my life. I realized how stupid I had been to ride around in cars and live in homes that didn't belong to me. It was just status, and it was short-lived. Shug was different. He was more frugal. Instead of handing out thousands, he was handing out hundreds. But he seemed off when it came to music. It was like he was trying to recreate the old death row. He had even signed a Snoop Dogg lookalike and a guy that sounded like Pac. It wasn't personal for me. I just didn't need a Tupac replacement. There was only one Pac. And a Snoop lookalike? That was some crazy shit. Shug even had a few guys who thought they could sing. None of it was working for me. Shug had dangled the title of assistant producer, so I was there to make that happen, but the new music was some of the worst shit I'd ever heard. They put the fake Snoop on records with the real Tupac. They were destroying legendary work. Shug had a guy named Butch running the studio and mastering records. This dude had become a producer overnight. He was fucking up records. I was working right alongside Shug, but this time I was an adult. I watched his every move, just like I know he was watching mine. I had a chance to see the new Shug. He was still a nice guy when he wasn't being childish and starting shit. He was putting together a new label called The Row. During the death row days, I was never nervous living in LA. I'd always felt safe, but this was a new day, and The Row didn't have that same level of respect. Anything that represented that establishment became a target. I had to make sure that I was strapped every time I went to the studio or office. I was not going to go back to Chicago in a casket. Chapter 28. Party in the Closet. Everything was so accessible in Hollywood. If I wanted weed, there was always a dealer around with whatever I needed. There was really no judgment. Everyone was doing the same things. Even orgies were commonplace. They were easy to set up. There were always women around waiting for someone to bag them and wife them up. I had had my share of sex parties, so it did not come as a surprise when I was invited to a party hosted by one of my celebrity friends. When I walked in, I was tripped out to find that there were no women. There were only men. I mean big-time actors, Grammy Award winners, and even rappers all over each other like it was perfectly normal. I had been with guys before. When we were teenagers, Ray J, me, and some of our friends would have our own little parties. We'd be smoking weed and watching porn. It would start with one of us pulling down our pants while the others pretended not to watch. Sometimes we would sleep in the bed together and touch on each other. We'd be at Ray J's house in the valley. Brandy would be in one room, and we would be in the next. We'd still have our girls, and I had a child at the time. It was just something we did. It wasn't like we were in a relationship. It was fun, experimentation, and perfectly normal for a group of Hollywood kids. The shit that me and the homies did not compare to what I was seeing at this party. For one, we were all adults. These niggas were in the room doing some serious shit. They were going hard. I was scared as hell when I got there, though, because I thought that I would run into someone that knew Shug or someone from the label, but the party was turning me on. I wanted to do something, but I was afraid that it would get back to Shug. I got a little head, but it was nothing compared to what was really going on. This is when I realized that I might be bisexual. Hell, who in Hollywood wasn't? Most of the niggas that I knew were. Every party that I went to, I found out about another male entertainer that was a part of the lifestyle. My next experience was with one of my boys that was a part of a very popular R&B group. I met him at one of the Hollywood parties. One day, he called me to his tour bus. We sat and chilled for a minute. The next thing I knew, those minutes turned into hours. This was the longest amount of time that I had spent on a bus that wasn't moving. After leaving that bus, that dude was calling me every day. Back in my early death row days, I was young and curious. After my first real sexual encounter with another man, I ended up feeling depressed as hell because it felt so wrong by other people's standards. Being raised in church, I was always told that it was an abomination. I stayed in the crib for weeks after that encounter so that I could make sure that it didn't happen again. That really didn't work for me because I began thinking about it more and more. It was something that I just couldn't shake. The entertainment business can change you a lot. You could possibly start doing things that you never thought you would do. It's true what they say. Once you get money, fame, and power, you can do almost anything you want and have anyone you want, male or female. I was able to choose who I slept with, but they had to be a part of the crew, meaning they had to be someone that was as interested in protecting their image as I was. I couldn't risk Shu finding out about my lifestyle.